So I'm likely not going to read after I get done with what I do have on my TBR, read another Elin Hildebrand book. I believe I have one or two of her books left. And unless they surprise me and are different, I'm likely not going to read her again. I've noticed, and I've read, I want to say 8 books about, and that includes a trilogy of hers, where it is the same exact trope for every single book. And it's one of those things where it's like, how do you write the same book a million times and it's still selling like a bestseller and selling really well and whatever? And it's like, because I don't get continuing to read her books when it's the same thing, because in her books, it's typically where typically the wife is the main character, and she's just been widowed by her pilot husband. They're always a pilot. And then the other woman in the story that's like featured is the mistress. And sometimes she does change up the mistresses. Sometimes they're like in one she just happened to live on the island. In another one, she happened to be, I think, a pilot too, and ended up being her husband's mistress. And I'm just like, because like the recurring theme seems to be like they drift apart, like the husband and wife have drifted apart, and that's why, he has this mistress, which I guess makes sense because, that's how affairs can happen. But like, I think in one, maybe it was a different kind of story, because I think it was about a wedding, and like the daughter was planning her wedding and whatever. But I think she was widowed. The mom was widowed, and I don't remember if there was infidelity that was found out or what. But with the exception of that book, all the other ones just seem to be where it's the same formula of pilot husband, the wife seems to find like a career of her own after the kids are gone and like, left the nest or whatever. And then there's always the mistress that's discovered after the pilot dies. And I'm just like, it's the same thing. Why are we doing the same thing? And I can't think of really any other authors that have seemed like this to me. Of course, for the most part, I'm not really an author-specific reader. There's a few that I'll read a lot of. Like, I really like Mary Kay Andrews. I really love Pam Jenoff. Those are the only ones I can really think of off the top of my head, because I tend to not really read the same authors a lot of the time. Or I will like get a newer book and then discover that I've read from that author, and that's kind of how it tends to end up. But I have read the one trilogy, and I swear it was one of those things by Elin Hildebrand. And I swear it was one of those things, where it was like, and I think people will understand what I'm trying to say when I say they're trying to just write a sequel for the sake of writing a sequel. And I think the trilogy started with What Happens in Paradise, I think. And then there were 2 other ones that I also read that were in that trilogy. And the first one was pretty good. And then the second one was, I think I remember it being good. And then I don't know why there was a third one, because I feel like once she got to the third one, it just seemed like, I don't know, seeing what would stick, because the dialogue itself, for a lot of it, just seemed to be going nowhere. There were just, I guess, a lot of small talk, maybe, is what I'm thinking it was. But it was, small talk where nothing goes anywhere. And I don't like that in books, and I don't like that, I guess specifically in her books, because I've read, like, many of her books, and I'm just kind of like, okay, this is getting kind of silly now, because I don't want to really do that anymore, because I've read, I feel like, the same book, with the exception of, I think it was called The Island, where it was the, daughter called off her wedding or something. It's like I've read the same book I don't know how many times, and I feel like I've given Elin Hildebrand a decent chance. Maybe the one or two that are on my TBR that I will eventually end up reading, just because, I'm not going to waste money, because I have looked at them. They are good premises, so I guess I picked it for a reason. So I'm hoping that maybe those two will be good books, because I feel like the very first book I read by her was, well, that I had read, The Island, was really good. But then anything else I read from her just kind of went downhill from there. So I feel like after I've read up what I have, I'll likely not read her again, and it's unfortunate, but when I've read the same story a million times, I tend to not want to read it again.